I would like to table the agenda for consideration. When we did I think ATC, we added, there is an item on the agenda that talks to the service provider as the committee resolved. But I must then say upfront that the service provider is not ready yet with the report, and therefore they're not going to be on the agenda today. We will discuss the possibility of them appearing on our next meeting. But we are also proposing then that in the light of the concerns raised, particularly by members of the committee, on the written submissions themselves, we are then proposing that as the committee, so that we formalize the process of receiving the written submissions, that we take a quick short tour to the storerooms where the submissions are, and two, where possible, we give soft copies of those submissions, so that then the committee takes over that whole process of the submissions having been received by the committee. So if that's in order with the members, we would like to add that on the agenda. Any comments? Honorable Fultana, Honorable Swart, Honorable Luitrand.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks for giving us the opportunity to comment on the agenda. Indeed, I think it would help if we were to, in this very first meeting, lay out the process that we're going to follow with regard to these various forms of contributions by the public, so to speak, given that we had the provincial public hearings and now, which is what we are about today. Now, then we've got the written submissions, as well as any other steps that need to be taken. I think it would help us to have a clearly laid out roadmap as to what we're going to do, when, and so on, as well as the submissions made that were considered by the service provider. You'll recall that we had 1 million consents about right from the very appointment of the service provider, and we wanted so much information from them. So I think it would tone down our anxiety on that score if we were to know exactly when we're going to be looking at that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to know how far then the service provider is in summarizing the written submissions, because last time we were here, I think it was 140,000 of the however many, 400, 500,000. And that obviously we need to know that as well. I do appreciate, but we should have had an update from them today as to how far they are with that.
Yes.
And then secondly, the issue relating to the oral hearings arising from the written submissions. Were they only determined by that first 140,000, or were they also determined by the latter part? Because we understand, and you did indicate the oral hearings, that there could be more oral presentations based on the written submissions, because our understanding is there were people that asked to make oral submissions that weren't contacted. So one assumes that the basis of the decision of those that made written submissions and made oral submissions was only based on the first 140,000, and we would need clarity on that. You might not have the answer, but we would need clarity on that, Chair. Thank you.
Honourable Luitrand.
Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Chair. Are we now at this point discussing matters not relating to the agenda for today? Or are we also discussing confirmation of the agenda for today.
It's confirmation of the agenda.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Then I would just like to say that although there is much appreciation for the very hard work that the staff have done in terms of these two reports that we have received, and the agenda does refer to consideration of these two draft reports. Chair, with all honesty, I cannot think that we will be able to meaningfully discuss these two documents because they are quite lengthy today without having had sufficient time to prepare ourselves. The one document is 104 pages. We received it last night. The other one we've just received is 43 pages. And I don't think we can do justice to the process if we have to discuss them today.
It's fine. Honourable Bredenbach.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would also like to say that I appreciate the obvious hard work that's gone into the reports. Somebody worked, it looks like a couple of people worked very, very hard to compile it, but we've unfortunately not had the time to go through it. With regards to the 780,000 written submissions, Mr. Chair, again, I must say that we're very concerned that we've had no access to these documents. And by access, I don't mean seeing them. I mean having the time to work through each of them. We certainly have every intention of reading each written submission. There's not any possibility that we're going to accept a précis of what is contained therein from any kind of service provider that we had no part in appointing. We want access to the 780,000 written submissions, and we want the time to go through them.
Honourable Carter.
Chairperson, I've basically been covered on all of it. I just to say that it is the responsibility of this committee to go through all of the written submissions. It is not the responsibility of anyone else. So yes, although we're going to have a tour, that is one thing. But I honestly say after the tour and the committee program, I would also agree that we cannot be expected to receive documents that has got the information and then not to have the time to prepare for the meeting.
Honourable Magwebu.
Thank you, Chair. On the documents we've received, in fact, referring to the program, to the agenda for today, the documents we have received a minute or two ago, I just want to echo the sentiment that you, Chairperson, it wouldn't be correct and it would be an injustice if we were to process these documents because we don't only need to have them, we need time to be afforded time and space to apply our minds to them. So today, it's practically impossible. That's my view. Thank you.
Honourable Mulder.
Thank you, Chairperson. I did not receive any documentation last night. I've received the 104-page document just now. I have not received the second report, and I have not received the agenda. Once I've seen them, I would like to make an input on the agenda. Thank you.
Can you circulate the agenda? Honourable Buchman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the agenda. I think, Chair, it's common cause that the documents was only received last night, and today, of course, we will need some days to study it, and also maybe at the next meeting get a presentation from the compilers on the documentation. So I think it's fine. Maybe also the other principle that's quite important, if there is, for instance, parties or groups that have previously indicated that they also want to make oral submissions, I think we as a committee should look at that so that we can be inclusive as possible. Thank you.
Honourable Smith.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, I want to reconcile with what most of the colleagues said here. I think what we should do today is to formally table these documents, not for discussion, and to find a day where the authors of these documents must present. I also agree, Chair, that we must be given access to the written submissions. But what I do think, Chair, because there's in excess of 400,000 or 500,000, that this committee is going to have to take a decision on a time frame. Because if we left it open-ended, we could go the whole year just going through the documentation. I do think that we should be given access to the documents, but I do think that there should be a time frame by which members should have open access to those documents so that we could meaningfully engage with the contents of those documents. So to summarize, I agree, let us table formally both the reports from the Parliament and the written submissions that are sitting somewhere in somebody's office. And secondly, maybe agree on a time frame for members in terms of how long do we take to process the documents that are written documents. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Shabang.
Thank you, Chair. Let me also align myself with the latter speakers that these documents are very important and they contain the lives of about 75 million people with regard to the expropriation of land without compensation. Therefore, it would be not very important to just page them through and accept as the report as it is. I propose that the matter be postponed, but we must also have a time frame. Thank you.
Yeah. Honorable Mampuru.
No, thank you, Chairperson. Good morning, everybody. I have a proposal that nonetheless you have received these reports as of now. Can't we allow the presenters to present the reports and then we note them? Thank you, Chair.
Is that a follow-up, Dr. Letwin?
Thank you, Chair. I don't know whether Honourable Mulder also, after he's received the agenda, wanted to say something. But whilst I have the opportunity, I just want to link on to what Honourable Swart said in terms of the request to make oral submissions to Parliament. What was clear that we've heard throughout the oral submissions that were made was the high-level report. And I would like to propose that we also consider perhaps having, contacting the authors of the high-level report and also to invite them for an oral submission.
Honourable Swart, follow-up?
No, thank you, Chair. I don't suggest we go through this now, this document. We need to read it. And I don't support the view that we should allow the drafters to go through it now. It's a waste of time. We need to read it. I've just got these documents now. It's extensive, and we need to read that. Chair, as far as the high-level panel is concerned, I did raise that during the hearings when it came up continuously, and I would strongly suggest that we consider that as an input. How we do that, we can discuss as a committee, but there's 250 pages of that high-level panel that concern land. Extensive public hearings were held throughout the country, and I think we could learn from that process as well. So I would just support my colleague in that regard. Thank you, Chair.
Honourable Mutabo.
Thank you, Chairperson. Let me start by thanking Secretariat for your job well done. Chairperson, I would like to align myself with Honourable Smith and Honourable Beckman. Let the report be tabled, and then we note it. And then, Chairperson, as to high-level panel recommendations, those don't have status now. They are just mere recommendations. Therefore, there's no way we can have a look at those recommendations as they don't have any status as of now.
Honourable Mulder, followed by Honourable Sultana.
Thank you, Chairperson. I've received the agenda. We're making progress. I haven't received the second report yet, but we'll get it soon. Now, there's no way that we can even listen now to somebody presenting the reports. It will be a waste of time. We can go and read it ourselves, and we need to do that. With regard to the high-level panel, I don't think the proposal is that we should interact with the proposals. I would propose that last week when we had the oral hearings, Chairperson, you made it very clear that this is the end of that current process of oral hearings, but that may not be the end of oral hearings because we don't know. In the written submissions that has not been processed, there may be further requests. I would like to propose that we invite representatives from the High Panel to come and make an oral representation. The reason being that during the oral representations last week, numerous people referred to that report. And it will be irresponsible for us just to ignore it as if it didn't happen. We want to get as many views as possible. With regard to the agenda, I remember at the previous meeting, the Honourable Malema specifically requested that he wanted the committee to have a look at the videos that were taken during the provincial hearings. I don't see that on the agenda. Was that request turned down? Was a decision taken? I don't know. Thank you.
Honourable Tana.
Chair, if there's still an opportunity to invite any critical role player because of their relevance to what we're about, there's one office that needs to be invited, and that is the Office of the Valuer General. And the reason being that throughout the public hearings in the various provinces, there was this constant reference to the fact that the state or the government has not exploited to the full the land reform provisions in Section 25. And I know that the Valuer General plays a critical role when it comes to deciding whether a farm should be bought at reasonable price or should be bought for zero rents. That is a very, very critical stakeholder in the whole process. Insofar as today is concerned, I suggest we proceed with the 103 document. That is the report that we got yesterday. I made time. I only went to bed around about 12 midnight because I was going through it. And I would have expected a similar response from fellow MPs. We have to move forward. Thank you.
Honourable Brenbach, please, let's close now. I think you're the last.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The suggestions that the high-level panel report has no status is somewhat misplaced in my view. All of the written and oral submissions are recommendations to this panel. And so the high-level report, being recommendations, has the same status as all the others. There are many of the portfolio committees in Parliament currently debating, considering and deliberating over the high-level panel report. So to say that it has no status isn't entirely correct.
Honourable Carter.
No, Chair, it's fine. I've had my hand up forever, but I think I've been covered. Thank you.
We did give you an opportunity earlier. Well, you had another hand after that.
No, it was on the high-level panel report issue. Thank you, Chair.
No, it's not on the agenda, so it's just members making their own comments, but it's fine. Honourable members, the resolution of the committee was that we put on the advert that people, because we knew that there will be a high turnout or high interest or high turnout of interest from the public on the matter, on the question of this possible amendment. We asked people to make indications if they want to appear before the committee, because there is no way we could call 700,000 people to appear before the committee. It's just not possible. So we must stick with that position that those who indicated out of the advert that they want to speak, that we can give due consideration on those. And that's not open-ended as well. If we have 400,000, 40,000 of those, they're not going to appear. It's never happened in this parliament that you then, everybody that has requested to appear before a committee is given that opportunity. The hate speech bill have 75,000. I don't think they will meet those 75,000 submitters before them. So let's be realistic about this. We will do what we can. I think, as I replied to the members last week, that because of this disjuncture in completing the report of the submissions, there might be people that would have been considered, and that we will have to explore the possibility in the program to conclude with those. And the committee would then have an opportunity to, if we discovered that it's 20,000, we'll bring the figures here, and then we discuss how many and who do we think are strategic to bring to the committee. But not that we are saying that 20,000 of them out of the 400,000 will still appear before the committee. I don't think it's possible and feasible. That's number one. Secondly, These reports, the purpose of us bringing these reports here today and asking the members to go and see the submissions themselves is then to initiate the process of handover to the committee, its work from the Secretariat. And so what we do then in processing these reports and written submissions, as Honorable Breitenbach is saying she would want to go through all of them, it's a matter that we will then come back once you've seen those documents, how is feasible. So we have to book a room for 6 months, keep them here so that we are able to, because they will never go on a file. So in essence, we have to be realistic. So the process of going there to see them is really for you to then, as a committee, take ownership of that process of those written submissions. So they are officially handed over to the committee as the committee has requested the public to do so. So that's the purpose of us going to that. And those that are on emails will be put on the soft copies so that members access them as well. What we tried to do for today, and I hope is still feasible, was then, Honorable Swart, to ask the service provider at least to give us a spreadsheet of the submissions that they've gone through so far. But the intention originally, and which is a reason why they are not here, they couldn't be here today, is the fact that we wanted them to give us the 450,000 or whatever the 400,000 odd that was not part of the 149,000. So the complete report, so they exit. And that report was also going to be tabled today after they've appeared and said one or two things. And then we would then have gone what you are suggesting today, that there's no time, let's start then the process of fusing those reports into one working report. So that's the intention for this meeting of today, that we hand over everything to the committee, it's noted, then it's part of the formal processes of the committee going forward. I think I've answered, Honorable Swart?
Chair, I appreciate that explanation, but I just wanted clarity then as to the decision of the oral hearings based on the written submissions. Was that taken on the first 140,000 then, or was it taken on the additional 400,000 as well, or are we not in a position? But I appreciate your indication that there will be a possibility that we will discuss those people that asked to make oral submissions based on their written submissions. We'd have to consider how many there are. In the Hate Speech Bill and Justice Committee, there's 75,000 written submissions. Not all of them have asked to make oral submissions. So I just want, and maybe we're not in a position at this stage to know how many, whether the decision was taken. Those that were invited to make oral submissions, was it on the first 149,000 or not, Chair?
Yeah, it was on the first, yes, on the first batch of the 149,000, but also those like the ones you, Honorable Swart, you indicated that they spoke and we went and verified on the submissions. And those that have contacted the Secretariat asking that they have requested what has happened. So we've included them on the list. Remember, the committee approved 28 only, but what we considered was more than 28 last week. 40, yeah. So that includes those that indicated upfront, and therefore we went back and verified that they have requested. So none of those that appeared are the people that we invited. Perhaps that reminds me of another point, that other members here now are suggesting that we start another process of inviting those that we feel, and I don't think it's possible. I don't think it's possible that we start a process of inviting other people as a committee, because we've given them the preference to indicate on the advert itself. So I don't think even the high-level panel, the committee must just go through the work, and it doesn't stop any member to go and read the recommendations on the high panel, and I don't know who to invite on the high level panel. Is it Motlanthe, and is it who? And we had some of the members of the panel presenting their views. I mean, their views before the committee. Ruth Hall, and in the colloquium, we invited some of the members of the high level panel. So I think when we engage the reports, and having been referred to by the submitters, the high-level report, it does point out certain sections, paragraphs, whatever, in the report. So it doesn't stop a member to bring and refer to those things as well. So I don't think necessarily, really, we have to bring the high-level panel before us. Honorable Breitenbach, and followed by Honorable Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I must very respectfully disagree with your interpretation. This committee is busy with a very serious process. I'm sure we're all aware of that, and a very important process, which has very important implications for the entire South Africa. And it needs to be dealt with a lot of thought and consideration. And what you're suggesting is that if this committee feels that we need more information of a specific nature, that we're not entitled to call for that information.
I didn't say so.
Well, you're saying we can't invite anyone, so,
No,
and so that is what you're
I'm only
saying.
referring to
If
high-level panel.
well, I'm also referring to the high-level panel and everybody else. If we're found ourselves in a position where we need information, I can't imagine that we're not entitled to invite somebody to come and inform us about that. And that includes the high-level panel. Thank you.
For a record, I'm not saying so. I'm saying the decision to invite further people is not on the table now until such time the committee deliberates on that, including high-level panel. Honorable Smith?
No, thanks, Chair. I want to deal with that matter. Chair, let's remind each other that when we reached the closing date after the first extension, this committee said we can't invite anybody else, because at that time there was rumors that the ANC wanted its branches to come and give submissions. And we took a decision that it would be unfair to allow anybody else after the closing date to give submissions. Now, if honorable members feel that there's a need to call anybody else, I think let them put it on the table if they want to call it, but the decision will be taken by the committee. We still have the authority, not the authority, we still have the right to say this is your request as a committee collective. We disagree with it. I want to put it on record that we can't now, having denied many people after the 15th of June to make that request, to then open it up now. That's my view. But if the committee wants to open it up, Chair, let them open it up, whether it's the high-level panel or anybody else, and we'll take a collective decision. I don't think we should belabor it much longer, but if there's a view that they must do it, I think people must make the recommendation, make it an agenda item, let's discuss it, and as a collective, the whole 24 of us take a decision whether we're going to accept it or not. I don't think we should be bantering about it now.
Honorable Swart?
Chair, let's make it an agenda item. Let's discuss it, because there are two main bodies that are to be considered: the high-level panel and the Surveyor General. The Valuer General. Those were the two suggestions. We could discuss that as an agenda item, and it seems eminently reasonable to me, but let's consider that as an agenda item, Chair.
Yeah, we will put that on the agenda once we've seen those people that are on the written submissions. All right. Honourable members, so we're having 3 items then. We have this tour, which is part of the activity of the committee today, and then the 2 reports that we will just table, and then for members to take with, and we put them back on the agenda in the next meeting.
Sorry.
Correct? Honourable Carter?
Chair, just another item on there. We don't have a copy of it. It's just for committee program. Is there a written program?
Sorry?
The committee program is also on the agenda, but we don't have a program. So are we going to discuss that today? Is the program going to be tabled for us to deliberate on it?
Honourable Maile?
Thanks, Chair. There was an indication that members of the committee want to go through the written submissions, the whole 700,000. Honorable Smith earlier on indicated that we should then put a time frame on that because we can't just leave it open-ended. And I rise to come up with a suggestion that interaction with the written submission should be given at least 3 weeks, at the most actually. Thanks. 3 weeks.
3 weeks? Oh, just repeat yourself again, Honorable Maile.
Chair, indication was that members of the committee want to interact with the written submissions. And given the volume of the written submissions, we cannot just say we'll leave it open-ended because it might take us the whole year going through all those written submissions. Now I'm making a suggestion that the committee should, at the most, be given 3 weeks, committee members be given 3 weeks to go through the written submissions if they so wish. Thank you very much.
Honorable Carter, followed by Honorable Lotrin and Honorable Swart.
Chairperson, I really want to make a proposal. Before we come to timeframes and open-endedness, let us take for tour, go look at the documents, and thereafter we can come back, take for decision to say logically how long will it take us to go through the process. Thank you, Chair. So let's not just decide on 3 weeks or 2 weeks or a month. Let's go and take the tour and go look at the documents.
Honorable Lotrin.
Thank you, Chair. I concur with Honourable Carter.
Honorable Swart.
I'm covered, Chair. Thank you.
Honorable Mampuru.
Chairperson, I have a question. The deadline for the committee is the 28th of September. Are we saying that if we make an extension, will it be after the 28th or is it inclusive? Thank you.
Procedurally, we'll have to go back to the House and ask for an extension, right? So that part we'll see once we've received all the reports and see the feasibility of us reporting to the House on the 20th of September. Secondly, the program, Honorable Carter, is the one that was circulated. We just kept it here in case there's new things that needs to be put into the program. But the program is that we will meet to consider the report. I think it was circulated. Is it on the 20th? Honorable Smith, just help me there. 20th. And then that document that was circulated. I don't have it here with me. But does it answer you, Honorable Carter?
Well, thank you, Chair. You know, it's just clarity because it's a new item on the agenda today. So if there was a change to the program and we didn't have it,
yet,
so
not
it's okay. Thank you.
Honorable Mpumlwana, I need to move. We need to move to the room now. Honorable Mpumlwana.
I just could suggest that we carry on with the program as it stands now, and if people want to look at the submissions, let's stick to this at least a week or so. Next 20th is a week after next, so it's next week.
Yeah. All right. So let's go, honourable members. I don't know whether we conclude then that we've tabled these two reports and then we go see the two and then we disperse, or how will you suggest we go about that? We come back here. Okay, so we keep the meeting on until we're back here to close it. All right, let's give it a shot. All right, honorable members, we're back from a nice tour to, it's a nice venture to see the boxes. All right, so let's take opinions now on what you've seen. Honorable Maile, Honorable Kurenhoff, Honorable Swart, Honorable Carter, Honorable Mulder, right, Dr. Lotrent, Honorable Shabangu, who else? So everyone want to have a say, all right. So you'll follow each other orderly.
Okay, thanks very much, Chair. I think it was good that Honorable Carter indicated that maybe we should go there and make sense of what we have. And after having that tour, I still stick by my initial proposal that I think 3 weeks will be sufficient for members to go through the submissions. Thank you very much.
Kurenhoff.
Thank you, Chairperson. Well, I don't want to talk about the 3 weeks, but what I want to suggest is that we ask the service provider to give us a report, and that must be on the agenda sometime next week. And we also ask Parliament to give us some sort of an assessment of what we have seen. They must unpack it for us. They may say, you know, while I was holding up the one letter, there's probably 100,000 of them. They're exactly generic, but there's different names. Parliament can tell us that, so that we have some sort of a flavor of what is waiting for us. After that, I think we can make a decision whether we need 3 weeks or whether 10 days is enough for political parties who wants to go through it. Even if the service provider comes from, obviously there will be questions to them, and after that session, political parties may decide that we trust them with the process, or they distrust them, we want to do it our own investigation. So I think we should have that at least.
Honorable Swart.
Chair, I believe that there's, having visited that office, that there's a huge amount of work to be done. And bear in mind, we didn't see all the emails. That's only the hard copies. So we do need to get some form of report. We must apply our minds to the written submissions. That is required by law. So I would support the view that we need a report from the service provider, we need a report from Parliament, and at that stage, we can take a decision of how much time we need. But we need to apply ourselves properly. We then can consider how many, once the service providers have given us the report, they'll be able to tell us, Parliament will be able to tell us, these are the people that asked for oral submissions based on their written submissions. We can then consider how many of those we should call if necessary. Obviously, if it's tens of thousands, we can't. But I think let us postpone a decision on timeframes until we've got that report. It can be early next week. It can be as quickly as possible. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Mulder.
Thank you, Chairperson. Now, I concur with the two colleagues. We have, to a certain extent, an idea of the written submissions that are in hard copies at the where we've just been. But the problem is, Parliament tells us that they've received more than 200,000 direct emails. Nobody knows what's in there. Nobody knows what kind of requests maybe to make representations. We don't know. So I would suggest that we wait for the report from the service providers, but we also need a comprehensive report from Parliament with regard specifically to those more than 200,000 emails sent directly to Parliament.
Honorable Lothran.
Thank you, Chair. I also support the proposal that we can't decide now on a time frame in terms of looking at those different submissions, but that we wait until we've had the report from the service provider and Parliament.
Honorable Carter.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, I would also agree that we need to look at the reports, but I think it's actually very unfortunate that I know it was a very difficult process, and it couldn't have been easy for Parliament to all of a sudden, and poor Pat for all of a sudden being bombarded with thousands and thousands of emails. But it's very unfortunate that 2 months later, that there's really nothing has really happened. If I go upstairs to a room, that they can't even say how many submissions were in the boxes that were actually hand-delivered over. So that shouldn't have been taking them 2 months or 3 months, because we've signed letters. Okay, we've signed acknowledgements, receipt, exactly how many copies there were, for example. But Chairperson, and I'm not making this as a proposal now, I'm just planting this as a seed for us to think about. I would propose that, like we did with the actual oral submissions, we allocated a time frame of, say, 10 minutes per submission. If we have a look and we say some of them is like a one-liner or a two-liner, and if a spreadsheet that, for example, we've submitted on the 220,000, 27,000 will assist the committee, but they can actually screen through it. But if we then have a look and say, instead of saying a minute, say, let's allocate, say, 30 seconds, because some is one-liners, others are longer, but look at maybe putting a time frame to the amount. And then during this constituency period, we make the time to actually sit and work through it. Thank you.
Honourable Smith.
No, thanks, Chair. Having listened to the colleagues, I want to make a firm proposal that I hope ties everything up, Chair, that indeed we must call Parliament and the service provider to give us a presentation in terms of all the things that Honourable Swartz and everybody else is looking about. So I'm proposing, Chair, that we, as a committee, agree that the committee reconvenes on Tuesday for that presentation from Parliament and the service providers, because that meeting will then determine the program that we are talking about. And we can't delay that meeting forever. So my proposal is on Tuesday, let's ask you to ask the service provider and Parliament to be able to come and do a presentation, because everybody is saying we need that before we can move ahead. We can't then delay that process of the submissions from Parliament and from the service provider. And thereafter, Chair, we agree whether it's 3 weeks that Maile talks about or if it's longer than that. But my firm proposal, can we meet on Tuesday and get reports, the 3 reports that this committee needs to take a decision?
Truly, is it possible? The 18th? Is the date possible? So we don't. The 18th, where for the IT department, on behalf of Parliament, to do the comprehensive report on including the hard copies, but we're more interested to the record of the soft copies, because it seems they are even more than the hard copies. So IT should help to download and do whatever, so that there is that they give a report. Secondly, then the service provider then to give this report that they keep holding on. Is the 18th a date possible? Yes, Honourable, I recognize Honourable Carter. Honourable Carter first, and then Fultana.
Chairperson, I really have to say that I want to make the proposal, I want to make a contra-proposal, that we've got a meeting scheduled for next week, Thursday and Friday. You know, we're sitting with a situation, it is Thursday today. To expect them to try and do between Friday and Monday before Tuesday, to just download 290,000 emails is going to take them longer than this entire weekend to get it printed. To sit and screen through the things and boxes, which we agree should have been done already. But I think we're going to come here on Tuesday, and it will absolutely be almost humanly impossible to go through all of that stuff in 2 days' time. So I'm just saying I agree with what Honourable Smith is saying, but if we can possibly stick then to our meeting on Thursday and Friday and actually have it on Thursday.
Fultana?
Thanks. The reason I raised my hand even before she responded was because I wanted us to agree first on what we expect to be reflected in that. Then based on that, she'll be in a better position to tell us if there's enough time between now and Tuesday or any day next week that will enable them to to prepare the kind of report that we're expecting. Instead of just saying, let the service provider, give us a report. Let's just go into detail. What do we expect, the service provider to give us? I have got an idea of what I think should be contained there, but let's agree as a committee on what we want, so that it's not a question of when they present the report, we say, oh, this you left out, that you left out. Let's be specific. Then they'll be able to respond in context. Thanks.
Who was next? Honorable
Breitenbach.
Breitenbach,
Thank
yes.
you, Mr. Chair. I see when the Honourable Carter was saying there's not enough time, all the admin staff shook their heads in agreement. So clearly they don't think that there's enough time. I think that they've been under a huge amount of pressure. I think they've done a monumental amount of work, and I think it's unfair to expect them to produce that kind of work in such a short space of time. So I would second the view that we come back on Thursday.
Members, the request is not that you ask the staff to go and photocopy those hard copies, right? So I want to be clear, because Carter is saying to go through those hard copies. Otherwise, the staff have gone through them. That's why they were able to give us the figures.
Can I just say, it's a factual report. Political parties who do not trust the process can then go on their own to look at that. I'm not asking them to give me exact report on a stick or whatever and photocopies. That's over to the political parties who decide that they want to go through it on their own time. But we must have some sort of a report that we had now, formally here in the committee, and then the service provider. And thereafter we can decide on a time frame.
But remember, Honourable Konorov, it's on the backdrop that Honourable Breitenbach said that she wants to go through every submission. Honourable Swart?
There seems to be confusion. The report relates to a feedback of the summaries. It's not the documents themselves. And the IT is a summary as well. Then we will look at that. We will then decide how much time we need to look at the written submissions. So,
that was my understanding.
But we need to hear from the admin whether they are clear on that and whether they're able to provide that report by Tuesday or whenever. And if they can't, then by next week they can tell us it was impossible. And then we look at the IT report. Does it make sense?
Honourable, sorry, Tuli, are you guys ready on Tuesday? Just give us because we don't want to keep going to and fro. Tell us the possible deadline for yourselves.
Chair?
Yes. No, you use there is a mic, but.
Hello? Okay. Thank you, Chair. The sense I'm getting is that members would like to get numbers of what was submitted to us by various bodies, for example, and then also the number of email submissions that were received. And then they can compare those numbers to that of the service providers. That process is labor intensive because now the requirement would then be that we go to each and every submissions in order for us to have that exact number. And at the moment, I must say in terms of human resource capacity, we are limited. So the Tuesday one will not be possible, but we'll try and put together a team to do that.
Satisfied, members? That Tuesday, Honourable Smith, it was your proposal?
Chair, I agree. We shouldn't meet for meeting's sake. If they say Thursday, the point that I'm making, Chair, is that we can't go beyond next week without taking a decision of the program of the committee.
All right.
That's the principle that I'm taking.
So let's try Wednesday.
Are we fine with that? Good. So we're meeting on Thursday, the 20th, members. And then where we are presenting the report with the service provider and Parliament, 2 items on the program, on the agenda. Honourable Mutapo. For now, it's Thursday, Honourable Mutapo. For now, it's Thursday, Honourable Mutapo, to determine to determine the program based on the information from the reports.
Thursday, yes.
Yeah. All right, agreed, members. Now,
I'm sorry, Chair.
yes, Honourable.
I'm sorry, I don't want to be, it's just they were not noticing me. Just a quick one, there was a notice of a meeting that was sent out by PACT to say to us there's a notice of a meeting for the 20th and the 21st. Is that, so you're saying now it's only going to be on the 20th, not on the 21st as well?
Yes, that was on the assumption that we will receive the working document that has combined all three processes into one and be tabled on the 20th, then start to initiate the process of consideration. So the 21st was just a day of starting to consider a compiled working document.
Chairperson.
Yes.
So, Chair, I was...
Honourable Mulder.
Thank you, Chairperson. I just need clarity. We now have an indication from Parliament that they'll be able to provide us with a report by Thursday. Do we know what the position is with the service provider? Will they be able to do their report also by Thursday, or don't we know?
The service provider has given us, just to share, they've given us a report that when Parliament looked at it, quality control, they felt it's not to what they expect. So they returned it, and the agreement proposed date with them was the 18th, which is next Tuesday. Hence, we've been talking about Tuesday. That gives them even more time then to conclude if we're moving them to Thursday. So we'll have to take a decision if they're not back on Thursday with the quality report. Honourable Fultana, followed by Honourable Swart.
Chair, exactly what shall we be doing on Thursday? Secondly, are we saying Friday is definitely off? I'm asking this question because there's a possibility of me flying out to Canada on Saturday. I need to know if I'll be flying from Cape Town or from East London. That's why I want to know certainly whether we'll still be here on Friday, or is there a possibility that we could still be here on Friday, or what? Thank you.
Honourable Swart.
No, Chair, I think I'm covered. We're meeting next Thursday, and we'll get an answer about what the problem was with quality control of some report. We can ask them on that day. So let's not belabor the matter. I'm covered. Thank you, Chair.
Honourable Mulder.
Yes, Chairperson, we would like to assist the Honourable Fultana, but we don't know what airways he's going to use.
They are saying there's no express on a Fultana, so you are safe in Cape Town. All right, honourable members, for now we've agreed on Thursday that we will meet and present the two reports from Parliament and the service provider. And then we will then, on discussion, determine the timelines and the program.
Chair, one last point, the status of these draft reports, that are being tabled today, they are purely draft reports. There's nothing final about them at all. It's just tabled, that's it.
Yeah, so they are noted.
Thank you, Chair.
I wanted you to note that you received them. They are noted.
Yeah, thank you.
As well as you have in your tour that you've seen the submission so far. All right, honourable members, I think we've come to the end of our meeting. Thank you very much for making it into the meeting. We will issue notices in terms of venues and times for the meeting next week. Thank you very much. Bon voyage.
Thanks for the lunch, Chair.